Bro Diallo Show, Q4 Radio, AM 6. Oh, wait a minute. Sorry about that. I have to say all that again. Good morning, everyone. This is Bro Diallo Show, Q4 Radio, AM 1680. Tune in, app, iTunes Radio, and of course, Q4.org, broadcasting live. Today is February 14th in the year of your Lord, 2020. Today is St. Valentine's Day. And I'm here in the studio with Dr. Mingo. She'll be joining us every Friday for entire Black History Month because you know how black people get on Black History Month. They want to do something black once. So, welcome. Happy to have you.
Thank you.
1 second. I got to kill this light. Uh, can't even reach it anymore. Sorry about that. Hey, I'm back. And as I was saying, I had to, bump some love tunes. The only love tunes I know. I was raised on hip hop, so we played LL Cool J, "I Need Love," followed by what was the second song? Were you listening?
It was nothing for Mary J. Blige.
All I Need. No, not LJ Blige. That's a Method Man song.
I believe that's a Mary J.
No,
Blige.
that's a hip hop song by Method Man. All I Need by Method Man, and that was followed by Passing Me By.
Yeah.
Those are the most romantic love songs that I could think of. So, and since it is Valentine's Day, which kind of snuck up on us, because it's not a holiday that spreads high, no fireworks. So if it ain't fireworks, I don't even pay attention. But if you want to call into the Bro Diallo Show for some love advice, if you want me to fix your relationship, if you are alone and single and afraid, and you want to know how to change your circumstance, call into the Bro Diallo Show today. Today is the only day that we can call in and talk about emotions and things that normally alpha males don't deal with.
Alpha male.
Yes, Umarian alpha males.
When you gonna leave that boy alone?
I'm gonna leave him alone. He's headhunting now. Well, let me get the number.
They gonna be
It's
looking for our address.
985-7834. 312-985-7834. If you want to call in for some love advice, let me make sure the phone lines are active. Yes. VOIP, ready. So if you want to call in, if you want before the sun goes down to have the love of your life in your arms, or if you have the love of your life and things ain't going the way they're supposed to, I can fix it all. So, in the span of like a 1.5 minute phone call. So, that's today. That's the only thing I'm offering today. Today. So, that's all. I'm putting that out there because it is St. Valentine's Day, and it's the least I can do for the people then. So, moving on. Umar is headhunting. The Prince of Pan-Africanism, Big Papa, gave a list of names that he was specifically wanting people to search the documents. He wanted their home addresses and their work addresses because they have been critical of him. He's claimed one of the guys is from Kansas City. I'm telling you something about Umar. Y'all big city dudes. This has happened. I've seen this happen with my own eyes. It's happened to me before. Big city cats really get to thinking they can go to places like Kansas City and Tennessee and Arkansas and flex. Let me tell you, big city cat, something. You fly. Let me tell you. Let me just put it out there. Them country boys. Think twice, 3, 4, 5, 6 times before you head out of Philly, New York, Miami, Cali. There's been so many dudes coming out of big cities, coming out of these major states, going into the backwoods, backwater to bump heads with these country boys and learn a hard lesson. So Dr. Umar. But anyway, he's claimed one of the guys was stealing his philosophies, and he claimed that another guy was just being unduly critical, and another guy was, and there was a woman on the list too. I forgot her crime. Just being a woman is enough, I suppose. And another guy was trying to get his seminar shut down. because Dr. Umar is giving parenting classes. He's not, well, do as he say, not as he do.
Does he have kids?
Yes, two.
They're not with him though.
Can you talk into the mic?
They're not with him though.
They're with him in spirit. They're in his heart.
I don't know
But you
about
mean
that.
like share same address? No, I don't. I think not. But
I don't know about that.
anyway, do as he says. He ain't got time to be raising kids. He needs to get out here and tell us how to be real men.
Oh, because that lady whose mom owns that vegan food
Right.
shop.
That's what I was gonna get at.
Oh.
Exactly. Dr. Umar is out here giving people's government names and asking for addresses. And the time he was beefing, and he gave out his wife and mother's
Yes.
business address and told his followers to go there and have his wife and mother, his ex-wife or his baby mama, explain to him why he can't see his daughter. And that's just not a good thing. Because, I mean, have you ever interacted with any Umar's followers? Any of the Uber alpha males?
No.
They're not the most rational people. So, not the kind of people you want to be trapped in an elevator with. So, apparently, one of his targets has contacted the FBI. And Umar, and the person claims that they're investigating his terroristic threats.
Mm.
And he kept saying, I'm gonna get in your ass. I'm gonna get in your ass. And it's just funny because I've been attacked by like homophobic alpha males, and they say some of the most homoerotic things about you. Like one dude was fighting with me, and he was like, "Yeah, you know." And I was having an ideological disagreement over this Kobe stuff. This dude was like Saint Kobe.
Oh, the guy who wanted you to fight Snoop.
No, that's a different guy. Yeah, these guys are weird. This other guy was mad that I didn't show proper reverence for the loss of Kobe. That I was essentially, I mean, I have to say, indifferent. Like, you know, I was as invested in his life and death as he was in mine. I've never seen the man play. I just hadn't, you know, but so I'm like, well, I think, you know, trying to talk about celebrity culture and parasocial relationships. And, you know, I think it is a ideological, philosophical, even cultural debate. And then he jumps up and is like, yeah, that's why you sit down to pee.
That's actually much healthier for men to do.
But I mean, who mind? I mean, every single time, these alpha males, I guess when you're so manly, I mean, I call them Spartacan. You know,
All their insults a lot of times have to do with genitals.
yeah. Men's generals. And
Yeah,
what they
that's
do, yeah, it's the weirdest thing.
It's very weird.
And I used to, you know, because I was Umaring before Umar. And
How
I
so?
used to think it was such,
How were you Umaring?
before Umar?
Oh, you're pro-blackness?
No, I mean in terms of man is the head of the household,
Yeah, I remember those days.
the black family,
I remember
and
that guy.
and the gay agenda to destroy the black family. Remember?
See
I
what
used to have
Erica
that
does
knowledge.
for the people?
I used to have that knowledge. I used to be an alpha male. And shoot, I wish I could go back to my 20s and get back to that.
That
I've
guy
asked,
was crazy.
No, I wasn't.
That
All
guy-
I've
that guy.
asked the straight pride people. I said, if you can give me a secular rationality for your whole platform, if you can give me a rational I'll go back and join them. I'd sign up for straight pride tomorrow. Whenever I asked them to explain and lay out their positions, they just start accusing me of sitting down to pee.
More genital stuff.
Yeah, so I mean, I'm still I'm waiting on Irritated Genie, Umar. If anybody, if they can give, you know, I just go where the analysis takes me. I'm not even biased. I tell the Christians, if you want me to stick my elbows behind my back and do them little steps in your tabernacle,
Tabernacle.
I'm willing to do it. If you can simply provide me with some evidence. And even if you don't have concrete evidence, if you can give me a valid argument, show me what I'm missing.
That seems to enrage people. Like, I've been trying to get valid arguments for ADOS. I've been trying to get valid arguments for not voting for Bernie. And I never hear them. I always hear non-arguments,
Right.
which is frustrating. Before you get too far, also at some point, I'd like to show some love to people.
Okay, we'll make time for that. I haven't gotten any calls to fix anybody's love life yet. People are just, it's because you don't want to fix your life. Bro Diallo, fix my life. Only Valentine's Day. Don't call here with your your entanglements, emotional entanglements. Any other day than today. Today is the only day. Let me give the number one more time. 312-985-7834. But I'm just say all that to say, yeah, I will join any movement. I will be out there with the Black Confederates. I just go where the analysis takes me, and I just try to be rational. And I've just seen that it's better, it's more effective for us in the long and short run. So that's my only position. But yeah, some people, I never get upset when people ask me, explain your position, and back it up. Now, I do get upset. That was a lie. Because I've pretty much written it out. I've written it out word by word over and over again. So I think that if it's available, then if they can show me that they've put forth some effort to understand my position, and then they want clarity or expansion, I'm happy to do it. But sometimes people will come out of nowhere and want you to just repeat and break down what you done broke down over and over again. So, there's a position. And yes, I'm very familiar with the Umar. And, I've read everything on the straight black pride and the alpha male ideology.
That's like giving the bad kid in class all the attention.
Well, okay, then let's move on then. Let's move on. Before we get into today's topic, which is revolutionary culture and cultural revolution, which this is kind of related to, let's talk about some current news. The Bloomberg. And Bloomberg, presidential candidate, former lifelong Republican. He went from Republican to independent, and now he's a Democrat. And he's buying niggas.
Oh my
I mean, if you got niggas for sale, get at Bloomberg, because he's got money to spend. He's buying up endorsements. He got the endorsement of our congressman, Bobby Rush,
gosh. Yikes.
and the congressman you've worked with,
Yes.
Danny K. Davis.
That hurts. I wasn't able to verify that, but I know
I verified it.
Danny K. Davis did.
Danny K. Davis.
That's right.
Several prominent. I mean, the list is really, I'm not even exaggerating. The list is too long to read.
It's an embarrassment.
That all these black people are endorsing.
Yeah.
And it's pretty obvious that there's only one reason that they're endorsing. Even Obama has given a tangential endorsement. Obama has been used in Bloomberg campaign. Now what Bloomberg has done with Obama, what Bloomberg has done with Obama is taken previous footage
Oh.
of Obama introducing him and their former interactions. So there's one where Obama was president. He went to New York and he introduced Bloomberg, the mayor, or former mayor, and Bloomberg came up. So Obama is being used by Bloomberg, even though there's no live update endorsement, because Obama has promised not to interfere in the primary.
But could he do that without Obama's permission?
Yeah, no, absolutely not. It would be political suicide for him to use Obama. That'd be like, yeah, no. I believe that he's gotten permission. Or, I'm sorry, he hasn't gotten. He's paid for permission, because
Right.
Bloomberg's worth. You never know how much somebody that's rich is worth, but it's estimated at $32 billion. Is his personal worth, and that's not even counting the overseas accounts and all that. That's just cash on hand. So 32 billion, he could spend 2 billion on his campaign and still, not lose any sleep.
Yep.
But anyway, so from Obama trickling on down, and Obama's still popular. So anyway, he has secured several, because Biden is considered to be no longer a contender. I'm not sure why Biden fell off because, you know, he was the top candidate for the corporate Democrats, the neoliberal Democrats, and the black Democrats.
He's still our guy. The blacks.
Biden? No, Biden no longer has majority support.
Oh, I thought it was like
Biden,
27.
no, Biden's number two. Bloomberg has, I think, 27 to 28. Biden is down to like 25. I know you're gonna look at, the whole time. Why don't you go marry the internet? 'Cause every time I tell you something, you run to the
Because
damn
I
internet.
saw that
Go on, do it. Go
I'm gonna
ahead.
let you. I'm gonna
Go
let
marry the
fine,
internet.
I will.
You can't trust me. You trust the internet more than me. Every time I say something, Bloomberg is trending ahead of Biden amongst black voters. That's what you get. That's what you get.
That's what you get.
So Bloomberg is buying up black politicians. And I went and I didn't follow my congressman on YouTube. I didn't follow my congressman on Twitter. But I went and followed Bobby Rush, and I at Bobby Rush to call him out for supporting Bloomberg. And I intend to call his local office and to go on the US.gov website for his DC and Washington office. And I think we need to start contacting our representatives. If you got a mayor, a congressman, if you got a state legislator, if you have any elected official that is endorsing, and many of them are, Bloomberg, contact them personally. Now, again, if you are so black, so radical, so revolutionary that you don't deal with politics, then of course this ain't for you. But for us who are still engaged in our local political system, for we who do engage in politics, I think it's time to really start. Now, we have greater access to these politicians. And you can go to us.gov and put in your area code, and they can tell you all of your federal politicians, all of your congressmen. They will give you your one of your two senators or both of your senators. You can go to your local state, Missouri.gov, Illinois.gov, and you can get all of your local elected officials, your aldermen, and your city council member, depending on how the setup is, your state representatives, your mayor, of course. You can get that information, and they have social media. They have local office. You can call their local or regional offices and start calling them out. And the thing is, they pay attention to that.
They do.
It gets to them. They have staffers. They have underlings. I've worked on campaigns. You've worked on political campaigns between New York, Kansas City, and here in Chicago. We've worked on political campaigns for candidates that, couldn't pay us. But I guess we believed in what they were trying to do.
But it matters. I mean, they read. I mean, if you ever doubt that whether or not, I mean, they get plenty of letters of praise, but they really pay attention to the letters of their detractors. And
Right.
it's important to send those and to let them know when you're unhappy.
All right. And I've been here for at least 3 of Bobby Rush re-election campaigns. I've never voted for Bobby Rush. But he doesn't know that, I guess, if he's listening. But now I called him and told him, I will never vote for you again.
You just took away, but he's not listening.
How do you know?
Maybe he is.
Yeah. I'm never voting for you again.
You know, you'd be surprised at who listens.
Yeah, I would be. I would be. Because sometimes, sucking MCs. But anyway, I continue to digress. So, of course, you and I support Bernie. You bumped head with an ADOS person
It's mind numbing.
because, go on.
I just don't understand it. Like I've heard you kind of like talking about ADOS, and I had some peripheral knowledge of what that was. But the more that I come in contact with those folks that have that ideology, it is just utterly and completely nonsensical. There is nothing there. It is of no consequence whatsoever. The pure nugget of it is wrong, and on every level. And so there's not even anything from which to there's no argument that can spring forth from there. And so to try to speak to someone who holds that as their core ideology is just frightening.
ADOS is not an ideology, though. You want to know where ADOS came from?
Yvette Carnell.
It didn't come from Yvette. You know, and there's a lot of infighting in ADOS, but it didn't come from Yvette.
It didn't?
It didn't come from a person.
Oh, okay.
It's a bastard offspring of a previous movement.
Which one?
In the late 90s, early 2000s, you had the Prosperity Ministry. And the Prosperity Ministry was basically a byproduct of the boom economy, the boom bust economy, where black people were starting to. There was always black people who had wealth, but there was this concept that within the Christian church that the pursuit of wealth was a worldly endeavor. So even though the church always had money and the church leaders always were some of the wealthiest people in the community, and you'll find that in the old days, back in the days, in the black schools, the only people that had cars were the child of the local black, like, city council member, the child of the local black doctor and dentist, and the child of the local black preacher were the only black kids in black schools that drove to school. You know, they had their own brand new cars. So even though the church was always a source of wealth for individuals, they always played humble.
Right.
And it was this idea in the black community that the more humble you were on earth, the grander your rewards would be in heaven. We learned that in slavery. They said the more you suffer on earth, the greater your, because God loves the poor. He loves the wretched. Jesus talked about the poor more than any other demographic. In fact, that's the only people he spoke favorably of. Jesus said nothing favorable of the rich. He never said nothing favorable of the powerful, always the downtrodden. He healed the lepers and he kicked it with prostitutes, right? And he didn't go amongst the elites to get his disciples or his 12 disciples. He went to some common laborers, and Jesus himself was a carpenter. So since the white man imposed Christianity on us, we always approach Christianity from the standpoint of there's different schools of Christianity. You got the Calvinist Christianity, which is the Christianity that believes that God demonstrates who's most blessed in a society by giving them worldly wealth. That's the Calvinistic. That was birthed, kind of came from the divine right of kings. Like, if you have money and power, then you are closer to God. And if you lack it, then you are further from God. Right. God doesn't like unclean things. God doesn't like sullied things. And poor people are unclean and sullied, so they're the furthest from God. Then you have the other Protestant, that was the Catholic Church. Remember the Catholic? But anyway, there's a lot to it. But then when the Protestant Reformation came, and then, anyway, it's all right, but let me just get to the major point. Anyway, around the late 90s, when Reaganomics and Bill Clinton came in, and he came up with the it's the economy stupid. Like, everything started revolving around the accumulation of wealth. Greed is good. The black church, which is a bastard offspring of the white church, of course, as white people go into unregulated hyper-capitalism, as they do away with reforms and welfare was demonized, and poverty. So anyway, you had prosperity ministry. Instead of black people saying, if you live a humble life, your rewards will be doubled in heaven, to saying, if you live a good life, God will bless you right here and now. Get that paper.
Yeah.
And so between the mid to late 90s up until the late 2010s, you had the prosperity ministry. You remember Tyler Perry went to T.D. Jakes' church and gave him $1 million. And I think that was about the peak of that was like 5-6 years ago. That was the peak of prosperity gospel. And you had T.D. Jakes literally walking across his mansion and into his private estate and showing off all these luxury cars. And he opened up the trunk of one of the cars and it was full of cash. And that kind of turned people off. So people wanted that wealth, but it just made people uncomfortable. So right as prosperity ministry started to die, prosperity politics emerged. We're not going to get our money from the heaven. We're not going to secure the bag from heaven. We're going to secure the bag from the government, which is really substitute white daddy, white God, white government, it's white master. These are all interchangeable things in the deep, deep recessed psyche of the average indoctrinated person, especially African indoctrinated African. So just as prosperity ministry started to lose standing and started to face criticism, we have this new, that from this foreign place, from this unseen, untouched, mystical place, this undefined place, riches will come. Wealth will rain down on us. We just have to, instead of praying to God, we have to protest to the government.
Right.
But if you look at the essential elements of it, it's all the same. It's prosperity politics.
I never thought of it that way, but I can see that.
Yeah, so that's what ADOS is, and saying, listen, the white man's fiat will solve our problems. Now, but the problem was and here's another thing with that, there was already a long-standing reparations movement. But the initial reparations movement was not focused on mimicking white wealth. Because if the core tenets of the ADOS movement is for black people, because we're American citizens, we should enjoy all the spoils of living in America. And the spoils of America is an empire that has stolen, based on stolen land, stolen labor, and it continues to steal wealth from around the world. That's why the U.S. military is all over the world. They're not there to protect or spread democracy. They're there to extract resources or facilitate the extractions of resources from the entire world back to the United States. And when U.S. corporations go overseas and hire people, they're not over there to create jobs. They're over there to exploit labor, to exploit non-existent environmental protection rules, to bring wealth back here and high levels of consumption. So the initial reparations movement from Cobra, Bill Grace, Samori, and all them cats, John Webster, their initial, Dr. Conrad,
Yeah.
that was an anti-capitalist movement. That was not, the initial reparations movement was not to allow black people to elevate or enjoy the spoils of empire or become more efficient capitalists. That movement was to subvert those structures of oppression. Black people were to take our resources from reparations to be made whole, to be repaired, so that we can better fight the systems and institutions of white domination and capitalism. Whereas the ADOS says, no, we don't want to be in opposition, and we're not trying to secure reparations to better our struggle against the system. We want to get reparations to become one and to become whole in the system. In fact, we want to be made white. That's literally their idea. And the way you're made white is by getting all the same resources as white people. And now they ignore the fact that the white community, even though the media gives them all that, is disintegrating.
Yeah.
You know, and you got
And that's why I feel like they have to move away from Africanness. They scoot away, or at least one of the reasons why they scoot away from all things African is just focused on black people here.
Yeah, I think you're being generous when you say scoot away. They are in a life-death competition. In their worldview, there's only a limited amount of resources that white people have. And that black people in the United States are most worthy to receive those resources than African people in the Caribbean, African people in Central Latin America, African people from the continent. And they don't want African people from outside that don't hold a U.S. citizenship, that don't hold a Social Security card. They don't want them to be able to come here and have jobs. They don't want them to come here and go to school. They want to embrace the Trump concept of building border walls and keeping them out of our countries.
And I just don't understand how black people of the diaspora somehow garner more venom from them than others here who have done them greater harm. Like, I don't understand why that's not more reserved for white people here specifically. I mean, I never hear them spew venom on those on populations that have done us greater harm. It's mostly Africans of the diaspora. That's what's so telling to me about their true motives and intent.
Well, the reason why is because they go to where the money is. They make appeals to people in power and money, and they try to shun people who lack power and money. So that's why they
But why do the rank and file go along with that? Like, I can understand why the leaders would say that. I mean, they might be getting some money or
the
profit.
same way why did the masses go along with prosperity gospel, even though the poverty rate amongst black people held the same, even though the
Very well.
personal and wealth holdings of the church went up and up and up.
That's true.
You know, go back and look at those old videos of Creflo Dollar. And Creflo Dollar would literally have people come and throw hundreds of thousands of dollars on the stage. And they believed that if you give to this prosperity gospel, God would increase your holdings. So you're supposed to give money to the church, and then you receive even more material blessings in return. So if you give your support to ADOS, then the leaders are going to go and mobilize and organize a campaign to get politicians to approve reparations, and then you'll get your payback. So,
Yeah, but ADOS is trying to make like an intelligent argument. They're trying to make a logic argument for their positions, whereas the others were trying to make kind of emotional or faith-based
ADOS is not making a logical argument because their argument
definitely
breaks
not.
down every single time.
Yeah.
Their analysis of how black movements are structured. There hasn't been one positive black movement in the United States that was not influenced by African activities overseas. Whether you talk about the Emancipation Proclamation and the Civil War, the European empires and the European colonial powers were weakened. The allies of the United States were weakened and subverted. And they said we cannot sustain this slave economy. We have to move from direct enslavement to colonization to neocolonialism. So if not for the Haitian Revolution, there wouldn't have been no black emancipation in the United States. You know, if not for the anti-colonial struggle in Africa, there would have been no civil rights movement or civil rights reform. There's never been an exclusively national movement. And also, throughout slavery, African people were chattel. We had no citizenship. So there were literally instances where a Virginia farmer would retire and he'd sell off his land and he'd take a whole swath of enslaved Africans and ship them to the Caribbean. Or there'd be some Louisiana plantation owner whose father died and he got a great inheritance and he was able to triple his land holding and he needed more slaves. So he would go to the Caribbean or go to Panama or Brazil and bring up a swath of slaves. And then there were times where Africans, like in Liberia, as the Africans who fought on the side of the British in the Revolutionary War that were here enslaved, all moved to Nova Scotia. And in Nova Scotia, there's a huge population of ex-Africans who were enslaved in the United States that are now African Baptists in Nova Scotia. You got Liberia. There is no clear-cut line of who is the black American or who has suffered under American slavery and who hasn't. Even if you want to end it in 1868 and with the Emancipation Proclamation, whoever was enslaved then, there are Africans that are from all over. This was a global system of trade, and they traded Africans like they did cattle and rum and molasses. They traded all around. So you can't really say, well, African Americans suffered under the American slave trade. You know, the United States was allied and enemies and back and forth with France, a slave state, Portugal, of course, Great Britain. And then you can also say, well, what if the Africans come up and say, well, there were movements in Africa where black soldiers from the United States in the United States armed forces that came to our land and helped to facilitate colonization and enslavement and the theft of our resources. So if you're going to make this a regional thing, and it's crazy for an oppressed people to set up their movement based on borders drawn by their oppressors. That's just crazy.
It's very crazy.
You know, can you imagine if, like, in the Zionists or the Jews in their fight against Nazism only said, well, we're only fighting for German Jews, you know, and we only want reparations for German Jews.
Right. That's crazy. And to take it further and realize that this is an argument that's being made to determine who one should or shouldn't vote for, specifically when the stakes are so high. I mean, they're always high, but at this moment, we're considering what we're up against now. and what's possible. I'm not even one of those like I'm afraid of Trump people. I'm really more interested in what's possible under a Bernie administration, and I just feel like to use ADOS sentiments and pseudo understandings to justify not voting for someone. Well, if they're not for reparations, I'm not voting for them, which is insane to me. And the worst part that I heard was, well, if they don't have a black agenda, if they
Right.
don't give us a black agenda, then I don't want to vote for them. As if somehow they want an old white man to create a black agenda. And then when pressed, they're like, oh well, we have a black agenda. I'm like, word? Yeah, well, they just won't listen to it.
That's rhetoric. Nobody goes to a politician and says, "Give us an agenda." And you look at other special interest groups or other demographics or communities. Nobody goes and says they have an agenda. Another group, like let's look at the Irish. There's a large population of Irish, and you have Irish cultural centers. You have Irish Heritage Day and St. Patrick's Day. And there was a time where Ireland was under the direct occupation of Great Britain. And you had the Irish separatists and the Irish nationalists, and they had Sinn Féin and these radical political parties, and they were doing bombings, they were terrorists. We forget this history. And when the Irish were here in the United States, you had two factions in the United States. One that wanted to remain part of the British, the UK, the United Kingdom, and one that wanted to be separate. The Irish Protestants wanted to work with the British. The Irish Catholics went against. But whenever, if you go to areas that have large Irish populations, Boston and wherever the Irish are today, throughout the U.S., they never went to U.S. politicians and says, "What is your agenda? What is the Irish agenda?" They laid out their agenda in detail, and they didn't depend on a politician. They went to political parties, number one, and they went to legislative branches, and they went to the executive branches. Same thing with the Zionists when they were trying to establish the nation of Israel. They're going about this all wrong. You know, I did a show on talking about the populations that received reparations and those who haven't. And what are the common overlapping practices of populations that get reparations? Like, let's go back to the Jews, because whenever you say reparations, the ADOS movement loves to talk about how the Jews got millions of dollars in reparations and getting millions more in reparations. And number one, that's a bad example, because if you read Norman Finkelstein's The Holocaust Industry, that money's not trickling down to the rank and file Jewish people. You know, Norman Finkelstein's family was killed in the Holocaust, and he said his few surviving elders, they received basically Social Security from the German state. As German citizens, they got Social Security, but they never got a dime in Jewish reparations. So that money doesn't trickle down. But let's say you want to say, well, they still got power. They got all this power. You'll notice, if you go to Israel right now, the number one place where Jews were slaughtered, where all the primary Holocaust did not take place in Germany. The nation that had the largest Jewish population at that time was Poland. And many of the major concentration camps and the slaughters took place in Poland. But let's just say, if the Jews came to power, the Zionist leaders came to power, and they said, we want reparation, and Germany said, fine, we want to make you whole. They didn't say just pay off the Jews in Germany or the Jews in Poland. British Jews, Russian Jews, even Jews in America who fought against the Nazis were all eligible to benefit from the reparations movement. There was never just that. You will not find, and even now, any Jew anywhere in the world can come to Israel and say, hey, I am a Jew, and you get automatic citizenship from anywhere in the world, even the Falasha Jews from Africa. Now, there are other problems there because of the way it's structured, but, you know, discrimination, racism, you know, they're going to do what they do. But you're doing almost the exact opposite, to the step-by-step opposite of what the Jews did, whom they love to point to. They got reparations, what about us, with the runabout game. So if anything, the more successful reparations movement, when the Japanese got their reparations for internment, they lobbied and got what they didn't say, well, we're not going to work with the Jews and with the Japanese. This is for Japanese Americans, you know, or descendants of the camps. The Japanese government was instrumental of Japan They went back to their father or motherland, was instrumental in negotiating reparations for the citizens here in the United States. And so even when you look at reparations movement for particular populations and the populations that have an international allies and that have a homeland that they can draw cultural, economic, political support from are more successful. Native Americans in the United States, this is their homeland. So they don't have anybody to really reach out to. And they have not received reparations. But now that more and more Indians are white people and more white people are identifying as Native Americans, I think the natives are going to get better shakes. But there's even been HR 40. There is a bill, there is a reparations bill that they won't bring to the floor. You know, so what they're fighting for, we already have. But anyway, yeah, this is really just prosperity. It's two things that makes it so popular. It's prosperity politics, and since many people can't really get with the prosperity gospel is losing steam, they just jump onto the next, bag. And that's another thing. There's a lot of self-hatred amongst African people, and if you start a movement telling black people that they're separate or distant from Africa, you're more likely to just automatically have people that are going to want to embrace it. Every single movement, Moors, you're not Africans, you're Moors. You're not Africans, you're Black Hebrews. You're not Africans, you're Native Americans. You are Africans, but you're separate and special and more deserving than those other Africans. All of those movements always just are like herpes. They emerge, they erupt, and they stick around. They're very ugly, they do damage, but eventually they fade away. Yeah. I think after the 2020 election campaign, the ADOS movement is going to fade away because a lot of right-wing Republicans are trying to erode black support for Democrats.
I can see that.
And so saying, well, we're not going to vote for anybody that doesn't endorse reparations. I mean, that would be like the abortion movement. There is a large part of right-wing Christian that want to outlaw abortion. And you have all these white politicians that run on abortion. We're going to save the babies and going to stop the fetuses, blah, blah, blah. They've been fighting since 1970. From 1970 up to 2020, they've been fighting to overturn Roe v. Wade. Now they finally got there. And many of the anti-abortion movement people had to vote for politicians that did not commit to overthrow abortion, because they understood when you're trying to do a large societal transformation, you got to be pragmatic. So if the Republicans, if the evangelicals said, we're not going to vote, what's your agenda for abortion? Because Trump is pro-abortion. Trump has been pro-abortion. Ronald Reagan, their beloved champion, Ronald Reagan passed the most progressive pro-abortion bill in any state government. In fact, abortion used to be a right-wing talking point because they didn't want to have to pay for babies of the poor and they wanted to sterilize. But if you study the evangelical movement and how they maneuvered in politics and how they, did a step-by-step, movement by movement, and how they started attacking adjacent. If we can't get abortion, let's try to push abstinence only. And then when we try to push abstinence only, let's do the faith-based initiatives, and started to penetrate and slowly get into power, get their people in power. And now and then they said, okay, we don't have any clout at the federal government. Let's go back to the state. You don't see any of these pragmatic, intelligent, long view movements coming out of ADOS. No. None of them. No. So it's more of a club than it is a political movement.
I can see that.
And when we throw that word movement around, remember Waka Flocka Flame? You didn't believe that was his name. And he did that hard in the paint. And back then, everything was a movement. And if a rapper put out a hot single, he'd call it a movement. Oh, this is a movement, y'all. So we started throwing...
The Villa store is a movement.
Huh?
The Villa store.
Right, that athletic store, it's a movement. Everything is called a movement. But there are certain elements to a movement. And I don't like talking ADOS because every time I do, they get on. They're very prolific. They have an illegitimate movement. So when it's attacked, they just throw word salads at you.
The hardest part about it, and then I'll just leave it alone, is that I think that it's gobbling up people who might otherwise make more positive contributions in a way that's actually meaningful for our people. I think it's taking people who have an interest in making a change and doing a good and derailing them. And I
Yes.
think that's what these quote unquote movements often serve to do. I don't really see the Black Lives Matter movement up as much anymore, which was another quote unquote movement that bothered me, and I did not like the rhetoric and language behind, but it was something, and that's kind of what they ride on, and it's always like, well, what are you doing? As if anything is better. Whatever they're doing, no matter how horrible, is better than the nothing that you're doing. Even if you are doing something, I can accuse you of doing nothing, and that's enough. So anyway, I just feel like for me, those are some of the loudest arguments I've heard against actual politics that can change the landscape that we fight on. It's not. I don't need anybody to come up with an agenda for me. I have an agenda for my people. I certainly don't need a white politician to come up with an agenda.
And it's not dependent on politics. The agenda advances whether Trump is reelected, Bernie gets in, or old black people finally get Bloomberg in.
I mean, do I want to fight for my people on a planet with clean air? Do I want to do it with plant-based foods, or do I want to do it eating rats and the climate apocalypse?
Right.
Like these are the. I mean, the fight is still there. The fight persists, and no one but us can define it. And so, trying to look outside of ourselves for that, as opposed to just understanding that the best we can hope for is a shift in the political landscape, which might change our actual day-to-day conditions. Anything beyond that, they're just playing games, and it's an obvious political manipulation, and I hope that people can begin to see through it.
Yeah, and like I said, I think just like Black Lives Matter was really big in the 2016 election. Remember, they ran up and snatched the mic from Bernie.
Yeah.
And remember, Black Lives Matter was bum rushing all the Democratic politicians. I never saw Black Lives Matter bum rush Trump. Remember, Bernie was giving a stump speech, and Black Lives Matter activists ran up there and snatched the microphone from him, and then his supporters wanted to take the microphone back, and he was like, nah, let them have their say. And Black Lives Matter was, so what is your position? And every Democratic politician would say, is it Black lives or all lives? And some of them said all lives, and like, damn it, that was the wrong question, regardless of what you're going to do.
Right.
And so after the 2016 election, they kind of faded. In fact, the alleged founders of Black Lives Matter have gone on to lucrative careers within the Democratic Party.
And the bright minds that were there really giving it their all because they thought this
They
might
get
be some
jaded.
vehicle. They do. And and I've seen a lot of bright minds captured. There's a young lady who's involved in ADOS right now who I think is a very bright sister. And I try to keep connections with her, but she's lost in the sauce. And
Who
it
that
bothers
is?
me.
You can't say her name?
I prefer not to.
Do I know her?
You've seen me go back and forth with her. I mean, the young man too. It's too
I know
much.
the dude.
It's just they're bright. I'm saying I think
He
they're
ain't bright.
Don't be like
I
that.
just can't think of his name right now. I'd say it. I ain't
Don't say
protecting
it.
Maxwell.
Don't be like that.
He's ADOS and proud. Say it
It
loud.
doesn't matter. I
I'm
don't
ADOS and proud.
But I think that he has the potential to be a better asset. I think that he has the potential to do more, and I think that ADOS is swallowing up people like him and the young lady who otherwise might turn their
I don't think
attentions
it's
towards
swallowed.
something
Some of
else.
them people pinch their noses and jump in enthusiastically. And I ask, his baby mama white. Do his kids get half of what our kids get?
Not both of them.
Now I'm being petty.
He has the potential.
I don't care. Yeah, I say. I mean,
mean,
shoot, you come to publicly say you ADOS, then he ADOS.
I mean, Amiri Baraka.
What about?
I'm just saying.
And you know who else is sat on the stage with ADOS?
Who?
What's his name with the gap tooth? I used to call him Cornell West.
No.
Yeah.
He's ADOS?
Mm-hmm.
No.
Cornell.
What
They
a
done
damn
got
fool.
Cornell.
He needed these fools to come and tell him what his political idea. Come on, Cornell West.
Cornell
I prefer to
West.
think of him. Wasn't he the guy in the Matrix?
Yes.
I prefer to think of him there at the council in the Matrix.
You know, I used to call Cornell West Coonell West because you know he got the what's that? You used to go there. The Warrior Lawyer. Everybody betrayed me. I'm forgetting everything.
Who's the warrior lord?
The movement when they used to have those weekly lectures.
UAM?
UAM, United African Movement. Dang. Remember when we started going there, they were in Harlem.
Yeah.
Remember we go up there and Vin and you and Caladosis would be up there?
That was fun.
Before they moved to you know why they were in Harlem?
Why?
They
Oh,
got
the slave theater.
They were at the Slave
Yeah.
Theater. The UAM used to have weekly lectures at the Slave Theater in Brooklyn, which would have been a lot easier for us to get to. We could have walked. We had to go all the way to 125th Street because number one, and they used to have Amos Wilson, Steve Coakley,
I remember.
Professor Mackey, Dr. Ben, Dr. Clark, Dr. Welsing,
Dick Gregory.
Dick Gregory. Everybody would come speak free and open it to the public. But they had one rule for their weekly lecture series: no white people, blacks only. This is for us. Y'all got because they were like, white folks got NYU. They got Columbia University. They got Brooklyn College. They got Downstate. They got all these universities. They got all these universities and they go get their scholarship. We got one black scholarship, one black intellectual space, and it's for us by us. And this was, they didn't ask, they didn't tell. And 99, and it was never an issue because it was right down there in the hood, right off Nostrand Ave. It was in the heart of the hood when Brooklyn was still black. It's funny be talking about Nostrand Ave.
That the UAM, I credit those lectures with a huge part of my like intellectual coming of age. Like those talks and having access to those minds and just framing so many different concepts for me right there at the source, that was invaluable. It's not been duplicated, and it was invaluable.
Right, but when they were in Brooklyn, they invited Cornel West to speak. Because Cornel West was the co-chair of the, was it Harvard or Yale or Princeton? One of these Ivy League schools. He was the co-chair of the African Studies Department. And he wrote an article, him and Skip Gates wrote an article critical of what they call the demagogues of hate and pseudo-scholars, attacking Dr. Ben, Dr. Clark, Professor Mackey, saying that they're spewing hate and, you know, they're using history as a weapon. So they said, why don't you come to the community instead of sitting up in Harvard or wherever you at, sitting amongst white folks talking about black people, come to us and talk directly to us. If these people are lying, if Dr. Clark's scholarship is not true, come to us and present your position. And he accepted the invitation. But when he came there, and I think it was like 94, 93, he came there with a white entourage.
No.
And they said, you're welcome to come in, but these white folks can't come in. No, it wasn't in an entourage, it was media. And he gave this big speech out front saying that I don't go to segregated spaces.
Oh, Cornel.
And he stood out in front of the Slave Theater and gave this big speech about how black racism is no better than white racism and blah, 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 blah. And and the media was there taking pictures and they bounced. Now, he never went into, like, right up the street from there was a Hasidic campus where in Crown Heights, Brooklyn. He never busted in there and said, y'all got all Hasidic Jews in here. You ain't got no Christian. You ain't got no black people in here. I never seen him go to an exclusively white place and demand that non-white people be invited. But he did this, and the owner of the Slave Theater, who was an old Negro judge, a wealthy, influential black man, evicted the UAM.
Wow.
It's like you bring in too
After
much
the
heat.
Cornel West
Well,
thing?
he was in danger of losing his business license because, you know, you can't segregate or discriminate based on race. So that's
bad.
why we had to go all the way to Harlem
That hurts, Cornel.
to hear Steve Coakley or to see Dick Gregory, when before it was right around the way.
And then the slave just kind of disintegrated after that. It just kind of...
Yeah, that was it. They were keeping the whole, that not just the slave, but if you notice around the Slave Theater, there was a whole economy based around that active space. That was an anchor for a lot of other small black businesses and vendors. All that just went belly up. And that's when I started calling him Cornel West.
Did
Since
he
the
ever
90s.
did he ever walk that back, or
I don't think so. Nobody remembers.
because then he couldn't be on the Matrix?
And this
Oh,
was kind of pre-internet. I think if he pulled some stuff like
yeah,
that now,
people would know.
But this was a kind of a local thing, you know, like the warrior lawyer attorney Alton Maddox. You know, he talked about it, but this was pre-internet.
Yeah.
You know, you had to like read the newspaper to get this stuff or be in the community. You know, so it wasn't common knowledge, but I ain't forgot. But I would call him Cornel West, but then I stopped calling him Cornel West because he was going at Obama's neck. He was calling out Obama's atrocities and Obama's war crime. Him and, who's the other dude? Who was he with? Was it Dyson? No, I think Dyson stayed on Obama's teat. Who was it? Was him and somebody else that were just going hard in the paint against Obama.
I don't know.
Anyway, so I'm like, okay, I'll call him Cornel West. I think this is somebody of his status. Uh, should do it. Oh, Tavis Smiley. Thank you, Coy Bush. Thank you. It was Tavis Smiley. Tavis Smiley. And so I started saying, respect where respect is due because they are actually, being such prominent figures to crit. They were the most prominent figures to call out the war crimes. And they weren't just criticizing Obama for, he didn't do nothing for black. They ran down his whole game. So I appreciated that. So I went back to calling him Cornel West. But now that he's ADOSing, I mean, dude.
I'd have to see that. Like, what part of it that he's supporting?
Who cares?
Wait, how
you don't
old
sit
is
on
he?
the stage.
Hold on, how old is he?
I don't know.
Because if he's older than 75, I'm giving a pass.
Why? Why?
Because he's an older gentleman.
Mackey was in his 80s sitting there spewing so much anti-white rhetoric. Mackey was a what?
Special.
When you get old, you're supposed to be more militant.
Wow.
Dale Jones, to the day he died, Dale Jones was on his deathbed calling and cussing out white folks.
Somebody could have talked.
I think Cornel West felt alienated because of his Obama criticisms. And I think he joined ADOS because he foolishly, you're off camera.
Oh,
He foolishly believed that was his way back in, that was a popular movement. And he's a minister. He's a preacher. He's a preacher.
I did not.
So a lot of preachers, a lot of former prosperity gospel preachers are getting right in line with this. Get the check, cut the check. That's their thing. Cut the check. So anyway. And then just a thing on the older black people voting for Bloomberg and younger black people being predominantly for Bernie.
And good job, Charlemagne the God, for saying that.
We don't compliment Charlemagne the God on this show.
Good job. He did.
We don't do that.
Yeah, we do.
Because Charlemagne said that Bloomberg is a racist. And that's it. You willing to overlook all of the...
Charlemagne the God has influence. And so for him to say, for him to go on CNN and for them to ask him, well, black people are voting predominantly for Biden and Bloomberg. What do you think about that? And he's like, not young black people. And, if they want to do that, if they want to be that way, yeah, a lot of old people will do that. But I think young black people are going to outnumber them in this vote. And they're racist. And, I mean, that alone, it's not monumental. It's not epic. But for Charlemagne the God, kudos. Because usually he doesn't necessarily go that route. So, and if it has an impact, and it does stand to have an impact, I'm grateful. So good job.
Well, can I say this? When Bloomberg was exposed to say that redlining, that black people, that the government trying to give welfare to black people, to advocate and to support black people securing home ownership, and the federal cessation and state local cessation of redlining is what caused the 2008 housing market collapse. When he said that he sends all the police to the black neighborhood because that's where the crime is, and his staunch support for stop and frisk, a lot of black people agree with him.
I know. That's sad.
That a lot of exposing their racism, and there's a really good book that I recommend everyone get called Locking Up Our Own. Because a lot of black people, especially older black people, will look at that and say, yeah, bust them heads. Remember the Baltimore, Freddie Gray, when his neck was broken by black cops. Mm-hmm. There were 3 white cops and 3 black cops. When those cops came under indictment and they had to come before the judge to plead guilty or not guilty, before the trial, but just the preliminary stuff, the whole large swath of the black community showed up in support of those police. And when they were interviewed, they were saying, you don't understand, you don't live in the hood like we do. If we didn't have these brutal cops, these kids would overrun the streets.
And I think a portion of that is that they have been oriented in their struggle, if they were ever a part of it, they've been oriented for jobs and for inclusion, and that was the rhetoric of their era. And so when you think about like older black people or people with them old-timey politics.
Old-timey. I wish it would.
I think, well, I mean, it's new. I mean, I know it's still,
nice.
I know it's still there, but if you're specifically thinking about the older population, they protect and rail for jobs. Like that's the language, that jobs and a lot of things, and it's hard for them to pivot. And so even though I think it's ridiculous, and even though I think it's extremely self-hating and harmful, even though I think it's menticidal on every level, I think that's why they would side with the cops more so than necessarily like agreeing with Bloomberg that we're the ones that do all the crime. Or maybe they think that too. Maybe I do give them too much credit. It's just hard to believe that we're that far gone sometimes.
We that far gone.
I know.
We are that far gone. But anyway, the book is called Locking Up Our Own. I bought that book in Oakland. That's when we went to the Revolutionary Bookstore by James Foreman. And he talked about how even at the height, this book is about the mass incarceration, three strikes you're out, and the right wing turn and the get tough on crime movement going back to the 80s and even the 70s. Remember those movies, Escape from New York and the hellscape of urban America?
Mm-hmm.
A lot of prominent blacks and rank and file black masses were staunch advocates of the prison industrial complex.
Mm-hmm.
And there are a lot of black people today that agree, more black people than who will admit it. That's why these new Negroes, they know to keep their self-hate under
But
wraps.
do you think that comes from their actual perception and the things that they see in their neighborhood, or is fed to them?
I think it
through
comes
propaganda?
from being birthed into and educated within and raised up within a system that is fundamentally anti-African, anti-black.
Right.
And many of us have embraced, and you can't embrace capitalism, you can't embrace Christianity, you can't embrace capitalism. How do we think we can embrace all these elements, these neutral elements of the system, and not embrace the racist elements of the system?
Right.
So it seeps in, unless that's the whole thing about consciousness is not just saying, hey, I can list all the black inventors.
Right.
You know, I know the day that the Emancipation Proclamation was signed. The consciousness is being deliberate in how you structure your thoughts and constantly refining and purging and developing and building and dissecting and reconstructing. Consciousness is more of an internal thing. It's not about what you can show or demonstrate to other people. And if you're not doing that, you'll find yourself casually laughing at the degradation of black people in comedy shows. You'll find yourself casually bobbing your head to music that is dehumanizing black women. And you'll find yourself indirectly or passively supporting your own damn genocide. They don't make people like Jay-Z and Oprah Winfrey billionaires. What are they being rewarded for? Rapping good?
No.
Having a good talk show? They didn't give Michael Jordan $1 billion because he's the greatest basketball player in the world. How do I know? Look at all the great politicians that didn't toe the ideological line.
Right.
Look what they did to Muhammad Ali. So if you could be the greatest rapper, the greatest talk show host, the greatest ball chaser, you could even be a great scholar. But you're not going to get in Harvard unless you have the ideological undertone. So that means that a lot of black people, they understood, Europeans understood quite early on. In fact, it was the Catholic Church that invented propaganda.
Mm-hmm.
But they have so greatly refined their process of psychological warfare and mass manipulation, mass indoctrination. They have perfected it. We look at how Europeans improve their guns, they go from a cannon to a nuclear weapon.
Right.
You know, they go from a musket to these laser guided depleted uranium shell machine guns. You know, they go from literally those Roman ships that they had to roll to aircraft carriers. We understand how Europeans have improved their warfare technology, but we very seldom look at their non-physical, the psychological amount of black support. Do you think our Congressman Bobby Rush, now that Bloomberg is talking about he supported redlining, he supports stop and frisk, he said that black people are the source of criminality in America, you think Bobby Rush is going to come out and denounce him?
I don't think Bobby
Or
Rush
withdraw
will.
his endorsement?
I don't think Bobby Rush will, but I know what might happen. You know, we might be able to start to see some of the young activists with some guidance turn the tide, make him pay for that decision, and punish him politically. There's some people running against him this time, and hopefully, no matter who it is, no matter who gets in against him, he needs to be punished for this decision and others. So I mean,
And that's the
there's a
black
chance.
agenda.
Yeah.
That's the black agenda. And there's no system for holding black politicians to account. But you're talking about you begging white politicians for
That's
an
the
agenda.
problem. That's the
I
problem.
mean, they're playing games.
Playing
You're
games.
playing games like it's a 400-pound life. You're playing games.
600
You're
pounds.
playing political games.
Back to now.
Anyway, Locking Up Our Own by James Foreman. I haven't finished the text, but I mean, it's really talks. And even it made me think about if you read Black Power by Charles Hampton and Kwame Ture, when they said they were organizing down south, organizing, they came from the DMV, from DC to organize down south. And they had to tell the young organizers in the deep south not to tell their parents about their movements. They said, don't tell your parents about what we're planning. When they would have the meetings of the young people, and this is the birth, the Black Power movement, how they went from we shall overcome to Black Power. Kwame Ture said, you know, a lot of the young people would say, Mom, I'm going out, we're going to protest, we're going to do this sit-in, we're going to have this meeting, because they knew, hey, we in antebellum South in the 50s and 60s, I might not make it home. So I want my mama, I want my grandma, I want my uncles to know where I am and what I'm doing in case they have to come claim my body. If I don't come back home, they'll know where to start the search. They'll know which swamps to look for my body in, or what trees to look for my body on. And he said, you know, the sheriff or the local white minister will come and say, oh, Miss Susie, we been good to you. You know, I've let you do my family laundry for the last 40 years. I've let you wash my drawers, and haven't I always took care of you? And she said, yes, sir. He's like, now, where was your boy last night? Who's he's associating with? What did he tell you? And they found out that the old black people were ratting out the young black people
I can believe it.
and had loyalty. And many people remember Del Jones.
Yeah.
Said his own father, when Del Jones, I mean, he was an old man, but when he was in his 20s and teens, and they were in the streets, Black Power fighting, you know, and he said, Dad, we're black and we're beautiful. And he's like, nah, you're dark and you're ignorant. Shut up all that black mess. Starting trouble. So, yeah, there is we ain't here by design. You know, oppression is always a dance. And I say black people are not to blame for this. We're not to blame for this condition, but we're responsible to fix it. It's our responsibility to fix it. It's not our fault. It was created. So whenever you see these minor divergence of black people, older black people mainly, establishment Democrats saying still, after all the revelations, and look what he did to New York.
Yeah.
You were in New York. We were in New York under the Bloomberg administration and the Giuliani.
I actually, and that's the thing about Bloomberg that people don't really realize, because I was a teacher, I was a school teacher in Brooklyn when the administration changed, and he completely upended the process of becoming a teacher, who got to teach, what you were allowed to teach, curriculum. He dismantled all of the school districts and put everything under one umbrella, and then put this woman in charge of it who had an egregious history and started saying crazy things about black folks. And she only lasted 95 days, and he kept on replacing her with a myriad of others that were just horrible. But I was there and I was a teacher, and I had to leave. I had to stop teaching. I mean, I stopped teaching for a myriad of reasons, but one of the main reasons was because his process of education was untenable. And so these are just real world examples of how this man is unfit to rule, and yet he's buying the nomination. And the only way that he can get it is if black people help. The only way that he can have it is if black people hand it to him, as we handed it to Hillary Clinton. And we ought to feel ashamed. And those that didn't vote or handed it to Clinton, who have anything slick to say about Trump, really need to check themselves out, because you're the reason.
All right. Okay. And then, and just to speak to, saw on the feed, Adolfo said that the Jews invite Cornel West to talk. And yeah, they did invite him more or less because he co-wrote a book with a very prominent Jewish scholar by the name of Michael Lerner. And they wrote a book literally called Jews and Blacks. You know, the book is literally called Jews and Blacks. So yes, he did have a foot in that community with those folks, you know, but he never called them out like he called out the black militants. I've never heard him call out, even though he's written 2 books, if I'm correct, on black and Jews or Jewish relationships, and he's always there. He has been invited out to speak before Jewish populations and other left-wing liberal, and I've never heard him call them out and go and insult his host the way he did with UAM. And you can just search Cornel West lecture, and he's lectured all over the world, and you maybe better look into it more than me, show me where he's walked into the home of his host and insulted his host and tried to violate the practices of his host. So, moving on. It's Valentine's Day. We don't celebrate Valentine's Day.
No.
Why don't you celebrate Valentine's Day?
I don't like these kinds of false holidays set up to create ways, give us permission to do certain things and control behaviors and silo behaviors into certain days and moments. There's also Sweetest Day, which is kind of like a dime store Valentine's Day. But there's all of these moments, they're siloed, and everybody just plays along. Oh, it's Valentine's Day, love and hearts. I don't really.
I'm not against black folks going along with holidays.
If you want to,
right.
you don't have to boycott it. I'm just not that into it. But I might choose pink icing for my cupcakes tonight as opposed to,
Okay.
my
Right.
my conditioning has been conditioned.
I let you make the call on Valentine's Day. I let you, if you want to do it.
And
we
what's
do
my
it.
call?
You said you don't care nothing about that.
But I sometimes, but I have my, and then I have my sons. My son asked me, my youngest son asked me, Mom, what are we doing for Valentine's Day? Because they don't really quite understand. They see different things going up in Target. They're like, are we supposed to?
And we confuse them.
We do.
Like a random 4th of July, we'll go out and get some bottle rockets. So don't try to blame it on Target.
It's true. And we put together
like, what's that? This is a bottle rocket. Come here, boy. Let me show you
a
something.
gingerbread house.
Right. You got that free only because it's free.
Yeah.
You got that free gingerbread.
I'm gonna buy another gingerbread house. So that was.
Well, it's not vegan.
That was fun. So we could get a vegan one.
You know how many gumdrops Sekou picked off of that thing and ate?
Not after it was put together. I saw.
Okay. All I'm saying is we confuse them.
Wow.
But to me, it's like it don't mean nothing. It's like when we were playing Mortal Kombat and Sekou was like, I'm going to pray to Jesus to help me. And he said, Jesus, when he felt he was going to lose. Oh, no, Monopoly. He prays during Monopoly.
He prays during Monopoly. It's really bad because our sons feel some kind of way because Diallo told them that he and I are saved because we've been
Only
baptized.
according to the doctrine.
But they still feel like we have a get out of jail free card.
If it's true. No, I didn't write the damn
And then Diallo,
rules.
Roma was like, well, I'm going to be baptized then. And then Diallo's like, well, no, because you have to really believe it. Now you don't really believe
Well,
it.
in my sect, in my Baptist sect, Covenant Memorial Baptist Church, it's saying that God, once you accept Jesus, that no one that comes into God's light can ever exit it. Because God's influence is perfect and God would know ahead of time. So God knows whether you're sincere or not. So once you've come in under the grace of God, there's nothing, literally nothing you can do to exit the grace of God. So if you accept Jesus Christ as your Lord and Savior and you are washed in the waters, then you can't. That's my grandmother tell me that all the time. You talk all that mess, but you know you saved.
That's the thing, knowing that you're saved. I think my mother baptized them or sprinkled them when they were little.
Right.
So that counts for something. But anyway, none of it matters. The correct answer was Mormon.
Right, the Mormon church is actually.
Mormon.
Real talk, son. If all that heaven stuff was real, the Mormons get their own planet.
Do they?
Yes. You don't get a mansion. You get a whole freaking planet that you have God's superpowers over. You get to be Neo in your own matrix.
Like snapping.
Yes. In
Wow.
fact, some Mormon
Like the good
sects
place.
believe that planet Earth is nothing more than a Mormon from another dimension that he is our God. Our God is a former Mormon from another planet.
Oh, individuals get a whole
yes,
planet.
men.
Oh.
But I let you could totally come on my planet.
But there'd be other girls there.
Yeah, I mean, hell, I'm a God. I can't just, I
I don't want to.
gotta love all my children. But you can come to my
No,
planet.
I'm not gonna do
You
that.
could come, and I'd probably.
Is
like,
there a girl religion?
I'd let you rule like my New Jersey on
Is
my
there
planet.
a lady religion? Where we have it like going on?
Oh, let me think. Well, Shiva, you get to like if you go to Hinduism, you get to bring about the end of the world.
No.
But religion is just really, it's really bad for women. It's just really, I mean, the rituals. Even if you become a high priestess, Vodun is good for women.
Yeah, it is.
Yes,
It
you
is.
can become a Vodun
Super
priestess.
powerful. I've always really looked up to, what was her name, Nunu from Sankofa.
Yes,
She's
yes,
always been
yes.
a
You
hero of
can go
mine.
do Vodun,
I've
Ifa,
always seen myself as a Nunu.
Yoruba, Ifa. But I mean,
It's my
once you
retirement
exit
plan.
the 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 like the animist primitive religions, it gets really bad. Like Buddhism is really bad for women. Hindu, you
No,
can't
I'm
win.
stick with African. I choose that.
Okay.
I choose
Well,
that.
if it was all real, I would straight up be a Mormon. I'd be sitting here right now with that funny underwear. Oh man, you get your own planet to govern. But you know my
But
planet,
you're black.
huh?
You're black.
No, they changed that in 1974. They changed that. They said that black people have souls.
Yeah, but
And
you're
black
not gonna
people.
get as good of a
No,
planet. They're
I
not
don't
gonna
need a
give you
bigger
good
planet. I'm not
planet.
greedy.
They're gonna give you
No,
the
but yeah,
worst
no, don't lie on
planet.
the Mormons. They only up in the 1974, a revelation came down from a prophet and said that black people genuinely do have souls, and we will go on to the afterlife in paradise, and we can be made whole.
Yeah,
So
okay.
we are no longer. And they said that the edict that dark skin is no longer considered the mark of Cain.
Who decided?
Huh?
Who decided?
The prophet.
Okay.
You know, the church has living prophets. You know, like how the Buddhists have the Buddha, they have the Dalai Lama in Tibetan Buddhism. Mormons have living prophets that nobody can know who they are, but there are people within the Mormon church that receive direct revelations from God.
Very well.
So like they're like literally, that's why Mormons are growing so aggressively, because they can update and remix their Bible on. Imagine if Jesus was still here and just giving new rules every day. That's what the Mormons, they literally have God's chosen hand-picked prophet representative telling them how to update their book and what are the new rules whenever they want.
Whenever they want to do it.
So remember when Mormons
What
were
do Scientologists get?
in the afterlife?
Yeah.
They what, it's kind of weird. They believe that we are possessed by alien spirits. And so it kind of returns to this consciousness. Your death, your alien cosmic consciousness will turn and reunite with the whole of the cosmic consciousness. But you have to unburden that soul. That's why they do the auditing. When they hook you up to that machine and they make you go through all your memories.
Mm-hmm.
They believe in past lives and a form of reincarnation or repossession too. But the ultimate nirvana or a high state for them is to return to the communal consciousness.
So I don't really get anything.
What do you, I mean, can you imagine just your ghostly ethereal being in a giant cosmic soup with all the other trillions of ghostly ethereal beings? How warm and fuzzy and comfortable?
No, I'd rather be
And
the number
stimulating
3
that would
girl
be.
in your mansion. Or
You
number
would
4
totally
girl.
not be number 3. And I tell you, I'd give you all of New Jersey. Hell, I'd give you the whole East Coast. But you know, I get Africa and the tropical regions. I'm telling you, on my Mormon God planet,
You'd lose
it'd be
You'd lose
revolutionary.
it because of hedonism. You'd lose it.
No. Once you ascend to godhood, you get your own reality to remake. You become God unto yourself.
Why
That is
didn't
the best freaking heaven.
That's a good heaven. Why didn't anybody call in for love advice?
I guess everybody's doing all right.
Can I have some I have like 3 I'm not gonna name names. I have you don't either. I have 3 matches that I'm trying to make. So maybe everybody can just send positive thoughts and energy to my matchmaking.
I could say
And
names
Jeffries.
there too.
But I hope
Bro,
you
Diallo,
won't.
tell it.
I hope you. That's why I
Q4
don't like coming
Radio,
on here.
AM 1680. Matchmaking and putting people together is really bad.
No, it's not.
Because you get the praise for bringing them together, but you get the blame. Why you bring
My
that man into my
friend's-
life?
my
You know, and what
friend's
is
mother-
that obsession?
My friend's mother had the ultimate match. She put together the best friend of her son with the best friend of her new daughter-in-law, and she put them together during their engagement, and he proposed to that girl, and now they're planning a wedding, and it's all because of her, and I want that glory.
But
And
you're bad at it.
I'm so good at it. I just feel like they just don't know how good at it I am. And that's why they don't do what I tell them to do. I don't just look. This is more like arrangement. It's not just matchmaking, because I look at the political ideologies. I look at their preferences and what I know about them as human beings.
you're bad at putting people together. And I'm not going to say about the catastrophes that you've committed.
But that has nothing to do with
That
today.
couple in
And
Kansas
so
City you
that has
tried to
nothing to
put
do. That has
together.
nothing to do with today. And so if you're out there, and you know that I've been trying to put you together, today's the day to give it a
I
try.
thought you said you don't
Right?
recognize today as a special day for love. You know, my secret to life is I
What?
only do stuff that I'm good at. All I do is
I'm good at this. I'm
Pan
good.
African analysis and Xbox.
I'm good.
That's
Just
all I
because
do.
You can't just say you're not good at matchmaking because you get sick of it or because you're annoyed
You're
by
not
it.
good at it because you've never created a. But I
That's
think it's
because they
messing
don't
with
listen.
people's lives. I stay out
There's
of people's
so many former students of mine. Had they listened to me, they'd be living very happy lives right now. Instead of making the horrible decisions.
I don't
that
see
they
how you
made.
get invested. You know, we got to liberate people and then let them go. If you know, just my thing is liberating people. You're trying to bind people.
If they have,
You trying to hold people
if you
down.
if you were like maybe, Erica did make this suggestion, and it is the 14th, and there are lots of interesting things going on for new couples today. Maybe I just listen to Erica today. If you're out there and you know that I've tried to matchmake you, since nobody's calling in, I
Matchmaking
figured there was
is
time for that.
Wiggity wiggy
You
whack.
could just be like, maybe. That's all. So I just wanted to throw that out. And I don't know if it's time for me to say any.
Well, we supposed to be talking about revolutionary culture and cultural revolution. But
Okay.
go ahead.
No,
do
do
you.
that. No.
Do you.
Well, I was just thinking that I had to close my laptop, so I have to do it another time because my laptop died. But when we were putting together Patreon gifts over this past week, and I noticed that there are people who really have been strong supporters, and I was going to say your name, but I can't now because my laptop died, but I will next week. I just noticed that there are people who have been supporting this show for a very, very long time, and that is just, I just wanted to show some love because without you guys that have just been there consistently year over year, I didn't even realize there were folks like that on there, just year over year consistently contributing. I wanted to show them some love too. So next week I'll say names and show off some of the gifts that we sent out, but I'm really, really just grateful, and I wanted to show some love for those people who have just been consistently running in the background, supporting the show.
And to the, if you will go to diallokenyatta.com or Patreon/diallokenyatta.com, you will see that there are updates. That Diallo Kenyatta is current, fully updated, and we've got some new things coming. Patreon is like 90% updated, and within this week, all of the Patreon gifts, all of the buttons, the media, and some new tiers are going to be up. So we're getting it together.
Yeah.
Because again, as I said, things aren't, the support isn't where we need it to be, but before I can get on people about not doing what I need them to do, I have to do everything I can do. So let's see if people can match my stride.
It's actually really fun to put together those gifts and to just look at people's comments and the way that they use the archives and stuff like that. I'm just grateful. I didn't really understand the interaction until we got in to put out those gifts, and taking a look at that really was encouraging. And so I'm just super, super grateful. We can see you, we know who you are, we know what your contributions have been, and it's just really humbling to see. We definitely need more support, but it's humbling to see how consistent some have been. And yeah.
All right. So can we, okay, now back to the show. Again, we don't really have time to cover.
Wow, that
The
seems to
topic.
be your general line every week.
I mean, if you hadn't gone on the rant trying to.
Oh, you went on an ADOS journey.
I hate,
A
yeah, I don't
fantastic
like.
voyage.
Oh, I did want to share something, being that it's St. Valentine's Day. If I can find the quote about what love is, because I should have found it before last night, but I that song, I want to know what love is. Well, Michael Bradley kind of broke down what love was as we. Oh, he doesn't have a index. But anyway, I wanted to talk about what he said love is. I could paraphrase it, but I figured I'd take it straight from the horse's mouth.
You want me to find it?
It's highlit.
That's why I was looking to find it.
But anyway, if you want 312-985, if you want relationship advice, love advice, or if you're willing to let Dr. Mingo pimp you out.
Don't say it like that.
What is it called
That's
when you
ridiculous.
put somebody on a platter and
I
serve
only
them up to
curate.
somebody else?
I only curate relationships for people that I have some knowledge about.
You take a person and maneuver them into an intimate relationship with another person. That's pimping.
That's stupid. That's not in any way near
I know it's
business.
stupid, but you won't stop,
Ridiculous.
right? So if you want to be chained to somebody, obligated to somebody, sit across from somebody in a bed while they clip their toenails. Dr. Mingo has a whole list of single men and single women that she has vetted.
That's not what I said.
You know,
I said I have 3 on the burner, and you know who you are. And if you're feeling the Saint Valentine spirit,
and you ready to get out on that stroll.
why do you say things
Dr.
like that?
Mingo,
I don't sanction any of the.
Dr. Longstick,
Wow.
Dr. Slick.
Wow.
You can what? That's what it looks like to
I'm
me.
gonna scoot over here. I literally want to distance myself.
That's what it looks like to me. I don't be trying to put people
You
together.
don't do it. You're not interested in anything at all. You don't even want to say hello. People come
I
up
don't
to
get
you.
in people's business. I'm about the collective. I'm a socialist. I'm about the collective. I ain't about. Well, I'm not gonna find this quote on
That's
love.
what let me find it.
You're not gonna. I think I highlighted it.
You probably underlined it.
But anyway, I have to talk about this because
Did Aromo do this?
no, yeah, Aroma did that when he was a baby.
Oh, you all should see
Half my
this.
books are jacked up.
Look
like
at
that.
what our son did. Terrible things.
That was like 10 years ago.
Oh,
More than
God.
10 years, like 12 years ago when he was a baby. You don't see how he's damaged so much of it. But it's funny how the kids don't ever touch your stuff. Like, you're sacred.
They love me more.
Okay, I don't mind that. You know, you carry that burden. You know, I'm a Umar alpha male,
They gonna take care of their mama.
theoretically. Anyway, today's show is almost over, and we haven't come close. I wanted to talk about revolutionary culture because I think that the word culture is thrown around a lot. People talk about, black culture or African culture, and I get a lot of questions on my blog about culture. And I don't think we really understand what culture is and what a whole separate revolutionary culture. And in fact, revolutionary culture is almost an anathema to culture. It functions much differently than culture because culture unto itself is created to sustain a people. Culture is inherently conservative. Culture is essentially the practices, the customs, the materials that are made, that are secured to the thought processes, the intellectual, cultural, ethereal, belief systems, all of those things that are meant, that converge to sustain a people. That's what culture is. Your culture is that which is the culmination of things that sustain you. And when you're looking for a revolution, you're literally rebelling against the very system that is sustaining you. You're not going to find it. I don't want you to. I'll read it Monday. I'm always a day late and a dollar short. But, so the system, that is the contradiction that we face. The very system that provides us with jobs, income, housing, security, is the very system that we have to mobilize to fight against. The systems of oppression are also systems that sustain people. Even in a concentration camp, the very people that are killing you are sustaining you. The Jews in the concentration camps were dependent on the Nazi infrastructure to bring them whatever meager food and bread, to provide them with cots and shelter and things of that nature. So when you come under oppression, the oppressor not only exploits you, the oppressor also removes all of your means of sustaining and tending to your own interests and needs and replaces that. So your oppressor also becomes your sustainer. In the era of slavery, Africans were dependent on the slave master. Not because we were incapable, but because we were no longer allowed to defend for ourselves or build for ourselves. So when you get into a culture that is encased within a system of oppression, you begin to have this internal contradiction. So you have a lot of black people that become radical and revolutionary, and they advocate, they say, don't vote because you're validating the system, or they ain't gonna do nothing for us. So at the same time the system is oppressing us, the system is where we can go for housing vouchers, food stamps. The system is what we depend on to inspect the meat, inspect the milk, and all these other toxic foods that we eat to make sure that they're not toxic. The system is what, when you want to start a black business to build up the black community, you got to go to the government for a business license. Depending on, I don't care if it's a truck driving, you got to get your CDL, you got to get your insurance, and you got to get a business license. If you want to start a black restaurant, I don't care if you want to serve healthy organic food, you got to go to the health department and take the health department class, and you got to follow the health department manual, and you got to open up your facilities for the government inspector. So at the same time we rebel against the system, we are still embedded and have to navigate the system, and in many ways we are dependent on the system. And a lot of people that scream, let's tear the system down, Umar, since we started with him, he's a good example. Umar has been advocating for over a decade all over the country, we got to bring the system down. He says don't vote. He says don't send your kid to their school, screw their system. And the moment the system's like, oh, we're going to remove your validation, we're going to take your license, he scrambled, he threw on a suit, he got a haircut, took a bath, and showed up at the state board to fight for his official documentation. So that is the contradiction. So what I want to discuss is how we can navigate that. How can we, because a lot of times pro-black, revolutionary, conscious black people get accused of being pro-poverty, of being anti-success, of being accused of hating on people that get theirs and do this and do that. So is there a way to have a level of stability, security in the very system that you're trying to tear down? Is it possible to engage in revolution and still sustain yourself in that time of revolution? Or did the moment, because some people think if you're a revolutionary, then why aren't you out shooting?
Right.
Why don't you have a bomb strapped to your back?
It's nonsense.
You know, and we can go throughout. And then it's another level of contradiction, because as Kwame Ture explains, there's a difference between oppression and exploitation. Meaning that white people that come under white oppression, they are not oppressed, they are exploited. And the difference, he said, is when the Irish were oppressed by the British, even though the Irish spoke like kind of this Gaelic language, they basically had the same, they were both Christian, even though some were Protestant, some were Catholic. They're both Christian, they're both white, they're both from the same geographical region. They have a lot of overlapping. They have a lot of cultural overlaps, dietary. When the Italians, remember when Italians came to America, they were called niggas. They didn't like Italians. And there would be signs all over America, no blacks, no Negroes, no Jews, no Italians, no Irish, no Catholics. And so there were several white, like right now today throughout Europe, the Roma people who are white. If you saw a Roma person walking down the street, you'd be like, look at that white dude. But the Roma people live under discriminatory and segregated, traditional segregated. In fact, if you go speak to a Yugoslavian or a Ukrainian or even a Brit or a German, and you ask them about the Roma people, and they will be like, oh, they are lazy. All they do is want to commit crimes. They have too many kids. And it will be almost all the stereotypes against black people. They have it identical to Roma. But so there are several white populations that are historically or currently or in the past that came under discrimination, oppression, even enslavement. But Kwame Ture said those, because they are oppressed within their own culture and by their own people, they do not have to dismantle the culture or destroy the system in order to get liberation. They can get free through reforms. So the Irish came here, and the Irish was worth less than a black man. And it used to be a time where dock working was one of the most dangerous jobs you can do. and they would get Irish immigrants to do the jobs that were too dangerous for black people to do because an Irish life was worth less than a black life. And so they would have the Irish people do the industrial work that was too dangerous for African slaves. But today, Irish people are fully integrated into the system. We've had an Irish president before, or a Catholic president, before we had a black president. And with that integration, now the Irish, the coppers, remember they would wear the cop and the paddy wagon. For the paddies used to be an offensive word for Irish. The Irish became the cops. They became fully integrated. And remember, the Irish used to be gangbangers and whiskey drug dealers, and whiskey was a drug during Prohibition. The Jewish gangs, there were several Jewish gangs, Italian gangs. So these people were able to get over their status as second class, third class citizens, as oppressed or excluded groups, without having a larger social or cultural revolution, because they were oppressed within their own culture. So if African people became under a system of oppression of other African people, we wouldn't have to carry out a revolution to obliterate the entire system. We just have to change our stance within the system. But when you come under oppression from an alien culture, and an alien culture contaminates and superimposes its culture onto your culture by either obliterating your culture or fully contaminating your culture, you can't reform, vote, you can't even get money. In fact, if you look at the Kevin Hart series on Netflix, I didn't watch the Kevin Hart series, but I watched the previews. And if you listen to Kevin Hart in interviews, or any wealthy, prominent, successful black person from any industry, it doesn't just have to be entertainment. I've talked to black scholars, black presidents of universities, multimillionaire black businessmen, and they always have this certain tone to their language about stay out of trouble. Stay out of trouble. And Kevin Hart's a good example because he's one of the most well-known black men in the world. But they talk about, you gotta. Remember, he was bumping heads with Cat Williams.
Yeah.
And he was like, I show up on time. I do what I need to do. I do as I'm told.
Yes.
And they tell us the whole reason you want to get money is so that can't nobody tell you what to do.
Right. No.
But the wealthy black people are some of the most insecure, psychologically insecure, unstable, fearful population. Because they got a lot more to lose. They have a lot further to fall.
That's true.
So even you cannot integrate into this system. Even Oprah Winfrey talks about, she recounts about how in her own community, how she's isolated and ostracized. So, and they had Black History commercials. We saw that commercial where that black woman, she's a manufacturer, a black-owned business, and she got her products and goods into Target, or was it Walmart?
It was Target.
And she said, it's important for me to have my products in this business because for the next black person coming along, for the next little black girl that comes along. And I'm like, it's 2020. I thought Madam C.J. Walker did that.
So trite.
So how long are we going to be paving the way? How long do we use this rhetoric of opportunity, of them granting us chances, of them granting us a space?
And especially this month, the internet is lousy with first black. I mean, they're really gripping. The first black woman to open a car dealership. The first black woman to open a car dealership on the Magnificent Mile. I mean, they've got all of they just keep making the categories ever increasingly smaller so that there can be this perpetual list of first. And it's like, when do you cut that out?
Well, that brings in this concept that black people are always playing catch up.
Yeah,
black people are always vulnerable and dependent. Black people have to always demonstrate our worthiness.
There it is.
And so it's never going to stop. You got Madam C.J. Walker paved the way for black women. You got wealthy black women in 2020 talking about they have to pave the way. And the only reason you have to pave the way is two reasons. There is no way,
Right.
or the way is obstructed.
Right.
And if there hasn't been a way since, if you got a black woman in Target in 2020 saying, I got my products in Target, and the reason it's important for me to have my products in Target, because the next black girl, I'm paving the way. Now, the way should have already, number one, we established the way. We had the first markets, the first civilization, all that. So who's obstructing the way? Or when the way was paved 100 years ago, who wiped it out? And how do we stop having to go through this recycle of rebuilding? And now black people are going back to look at these statistics about wealth. And they found that for black people, it would take over 200 years for black people to reach economic parity for white people with current economic trends. And that's only if white people don't earn another dollar, white people stay fixed and stagnant in their current status, and black people have nothing but the current rate of steady progress. It could be 200 years. Which is absurd, because I ask any wealthy population of people, what wealthy population of people came to a foreign system and elevated within that system?
Right.
The white men surely didn't come in and elevate in any system. Did they go to Australia and join the Aboriginal economy to elevate? Did they come here and elevate within the Native American economy? Did they go to Africa and elevate within African economy? Hell, did the Jews just in 1964, did they go to the Middle East and elevate within the Palestinian economy? Nobody elevates with. They've got us trying to do something that has never been accomplished in the history of human existence. And I know they like to use these statistics to talk about, well, Asian people in America are thriving. But that's only if you isolate them from all other Asian people all around the world.
And only if you define thriving in a white context.
Also, if you go to Japan, you'll find that the average black person living in Japan has higher education, higher rates of income, higher social mobility. If you go and find the average black person living in Russia, immigrant populations always outdo native population. That's just the nature of immigration and things. The people with the most resources and upper mobilities are the ones who immigrate. Homeless people don't immigrate. People on public assistance don't immigrate. They don't even have passports. So it is really absurd for us to even compare ourselves to immigrant populations. You know. So anyway, we have all these internal contradictions that I don't think that we've taken the time to suss out. In fact, it has been sussed out, but some of it we forgot, some of it we've neglected. And now in the era of the internet and social media, you know, and these things about our culture and what is African culture, and I always get these questions about African cultures, and we have a very warped sense of not just what culture is, but how culture applies to revolution. And what is revolution? Because culture is inadequate. Black culture is inadequate. We need revolutionary black culture, revolutionary African culture, because just culture alone is inadequate. Again, back to Kwame Ture, he said when people have a natural evolutionary process, all nations and groups of people, and when your evolutionary process is disrupted through colonization or enslavement, you have to abandon natural development and switch lanes to revolutionary advancement, or you will become extinct.
Yep.
So anyway, Bro Diallo Show, Q4 Radio, AM 1680. We might have to take this up Tuesday, and I promise you, I'm going to start the moment I walk in. I want to talk about these concepts of consumer identity, parasocial relationship, and validation games, which are present in the conscious community and expanding. And these are some new cultural concepts that have been given birth to or exacerbated by the internet era, and how we can stop allowing the internet, social media to be a hindrance to black revolutionary unity and development, and start using it as an asset. Because as Karl Marx said, the capitalist will sell you the shovel for which to dig his grave.
Yeah.
So these materials, and we have greater assets than our ancestors had, but yet we're slowing down the progress, or we're regressing in many areas. So how do we have more tools and more opportunities than our ancestors, but we're making slower progress in terms of collective liberation, and even in terms of person-to-person understanding and comprehension of our struggle and what we should do and where we are and where we should go. So that'll be Tuesday, because Monday we're going to have Uppity Negress in the studio. Good. And then next Friday you'll be back on the scene.
Are both of them going to be here?
I don't know.
That'll be good.
Because it's some identity theft going on. I'm going to get to the bottom of it.
How so? Because
one half, you know, Uppity Negress, there's two of them.
Right.
There's Cassie and Kiki.
Yeah.
But Cassie contacts me claiming she's Kiki.
She did that?
I don't know if she did it or not. And then she said she had this account in Nigeria, and if I could send her our bank account, she can get this money out of Nigeria. So I'm waiting.
Send money to Cassie, not Kiki. Cassie's more trustworthy.
So we don't look. I don't know, but I'm gonna figure it out. You know. So I'm gonna figure out what's going on. Nah, but real thing. Let me not start that mess because the internet gonna run with. She said Kiki said she was suspended, and when she gets suspended, they suspended her account. Then she went, but I mean, she said she gonna work it all out. Soon as she gets that money out of Nigeria and deposit it in our account, we get to keep half of it and get the rest to her. So we about to get paid. So Bro Diallo show gonna be off the air because we about to get paid, and I don't have to do this no more. So anyway. Monday, Uppity Negroes. Wednesday, we're going to have revolutionary culture and cultural revolution and how, to use how they have hijacked our natural evolutionary development connections to serve capitalism and white domination. And then Friday, we'll be back and we'll have some really big announcements.
Yeah, I'm working on
Some really big announcements for African World Order,
Yes.
African World Coalition, Ecologic Outreach, and the larger revolution that the Bro Diallo show and many others advocate for and what steps we're taking. It's almost time to start. The grow season's coming up.
Yes.
It's only 1 degree here in Chicago, so I know and they looking for that.
That's your favorite. He
That's-
loves Gil Scott. He said it's 2 degrees and we looking for them.
Right. But now you
Sorry.
snitches, man. Anyway, I know it's kind of hard in 1 degree weather to be thinking about growing food, but this cold air is really good. It's rejuvenative so I think we'll have a good growth season.
Me too.
There's been a lot of good precipitation, so it's time I need to start composting. We're gonna meet up. I'm gonna call a meeting for the growers, and we're gonna set up to prep for a prosperous 2020 grow season. We want to grow a ton of food for the people. Teach people how to cultivate their own food and then
Adia
share
and
food.
Chauncey came out last year and really tried.
Yeah.
to
So we
represent.
gonna do it big. Chauncey, man, don't mention that dude's name. He's supposed to bring some Uncle Eddie's cookies. We were supposed to meet Sunday. I'm gonna do like Umar. Hey, I'm gonna go for Chauncey. You know what I'm saying? I'm after Umar Chauncey.
Don't
Call
Umar
him out.
Chauncey. You could always just call him.
Nah, men don't call. I'm telling you, I'm
I
on the
don't
Umar
understand
program.
why it's so
Haven't you
difficult for
been
you to make
sucking?
these
Ain't you
connections.
smell all these pheromones I'm emitting? I'm on the Umar program. I don't call. I'm
I feel
saying
like
I'm
you
an
could
alpha
just
man.
call.
I just thump my
I
chest
feel
and
like
he
you
should hear
could
the
also
vibrations.
just like send a messenger message.
Yeah. Or I could just use
Do this.
I could just do it, and I just thought, but we need to be more. But yeah, okay. Yeah, I guess. But he did. We were supposed to meet last weekend. I could have told him face to face. Wilmington, Delaware. Okay. Anyway, hey, I'm not attacking Chauncey. I am doing.
Is that Chauncey moved to Wilmington, Delaware?
But no, he said he was. You was there when he called.
I don't listen.
We was on the couch in the living room.
When
He was like, I'll
when
see
I
you
need
Sunday.
to have a meeting, it happens. When I need to have a meeting, it happens. If I was involved, this meeting would have
Oh,
happened.
you so right,
already.
but you only meet with him because you trying to pimp him out. He's one of the people that you trying to make a love connection for. So since
what?
you snitched on me when I stole Gil Scott Heron's joke and you came and told. So it's if we
And
tell
the
him.
lady knows who she is too.
So let's tell everything right here on the. Oh, it's 9 o'clock.
Okay.
You lucked out. You lucked out. I was about to expose you. And you know how the internet loves exposing. I was about to expose you, but it's 9 o'clock.
She knows who she is.
Why isn't the outro music playing? Oh, there it is. All right.
Thank you
So,
all for
we'll
having
see
me,
y'all.
Bro
Thank you.
Diallo
We'll
audience.
see y'all Monday. Have a good weekend. Stay warm. There is a severe weather advisory in Chicago. Any exposed skin can be damaged. So if you're going to be out, you got to really cover up, y'all. Real talk. All jokes aside. And we see y'all Monday. Peace. But stay warm. We building a fire over at the Bro Diallo and Dr. Mingo house. So y'all want to come sit at the fireplace. You're all welcome. Everybody.
That's not true. I'm not
And
cooking for
Dr.
anybody.
Mingo will make. You said you're gonna make the strawberry cupcakes.
Don't come looking for that. I very likely.
No,
will
no,
just
come
fall
on, Dr.
asleep.
Umar. He's looking for people anyway. Anyway, Bro Diallo Show, Q4 Radio, AM 1680, Chicago, State of Illinois, America.